This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
I'm Frankie McCamley in London to find out how vertical farming could mean more sustainable food production.
And I'm Emma Keeling in Gothenburg, Sweden, where a group has developed a process that can chemically recycle all kinds of plastic.
For the past century, industrial farming practices and the globalisation of our food supply have caused great damage to environmental systems and contributed to the climate crisis. As the impacts of soil degradation and water scarcity increase, so does the impact on the quality of our food. So how do we feed a growing population safely and sustainably? I'm here in London to find out if urban vertical farming is part of the answer. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Frankie, nice to meet you.
Hi, am I in the right place? It doesn't feel like you've got a farm growing here.
Yes, we've got two to show you today.
Jamie and his team at Vertical Future have been running a traditional vertical farm for the past 3.5 years, growing fresh produce for local restaurants.
It's not often you head upstairs to a farm, is it?
No.
Wow. It's a big impact on your eyes, isn't it?
Yes, exactly, yeah. It seems like you're almost in like another world or a spaceship or something. This is about 70% red and 30% blue in terms of the lighting, and is a good mix for these type of plants. So we've got watercress, sage, Greek cress, different types of basil. This is wasabi mustard.
You've got this all year round, it's the same temperature. Can you just grow whatever you want?
To a degree, I mean, there are limits on what these systems can grow. We're never going to grow coconuts and bananas or anything in a vertical farm, but in general, you can grow a decent amount of baby leaf crops, all your different types of herbs, and obviously full head lettuce as well.
Obviously, it looks completely different to other types of farming, but how does it actually differ growing crops here than it does to growing them in the outside world?
By moving crops indoors, you're effectively allowing a higher degree of control over the growing environment. So generally we see much higher yields. We're much closer to end consumers, so we have a reduction in food miles. And this is a standard hydroponic systems. So one of the good things about not using soil and having a system like this, which is relatively contained, is that we don't have to use any pesticides or herbicides or fungicides. The idea is for this to be a much more sustainable approach.
But then you look around and we're actually in a warm area, we're in a building, there's lots of lighting going on. Is it really more sustainable?
We're using pretty much off-the-shelf technologies for this particular farm. The farm that we're going to show you afterwards, which is our own technology, we've very much focused on seeking improvements in every single area and designing a system which confronts all of those issues.
Jamie and his team have redesigned many elements of these vertical farming systems with the plan to sell their hardware and software to future farmers across the world.
Oh, wow. What's happening up there?
A major part of their new system is that it's fully automated from seeding to harvest.
It does look funny, doesn't it? Just cress on the move.
So we came up with a float system in these canals where products are continually moving through the system. These are also aeroponic and hydroponic systems. And then outside of this main growing process, we've automated pretty much every component. So we've got robots on each side where energy is required to obviously move crops. And then we've got this almost like roller coaster type system here for effectively sorting out crops, harvesting and cleaning.
The aeroponic system works by spraying the roots with a fine mist containing a recipe of nutrients that normally would be found in soil. This means the plants can focus their energy on growing upwards rather than down.
Jen, who's our head of plant R&D, will talk to you about the reason why we've got different colours.
With the industry still in its infancy, the race is on to find the optimum practice.
What on earth is going on here, Jen?
Okay, so this is our new system, and this is an R&D trial that we're running on it. So these plants are growing under the equivalent of daylight.
The daylight, is that because these plants are best suited to daylight?
So basically plants evolved under a daylight situation. So, you know, you've got to start at where their baseline is, and they've baselined all of their development processes on daylight. And so if you're starting to think about, okay, which elements of the light are they using and which aren't they using, the best thing to then do is start stripping it out. Plants do a process called photosynthesis, which I'm sure everybody's heard of, and that's the process by which they use light energy to build sugars and grow bigger. But what plants also do is a process called photomorphogenesis, and that involves different light receptors. So plant cells are full of different receptors for light. So they have things like phytochromes and cryptochromes, and these all respond to different wavelengths of light.
Photomorphogenesis is the regulatory effect of light on the growth and development of plants. Plants use photoreceptors to sense different wavelengths for environmental cues such as the day-night transition and light quality to adapt their growth. Phytochromes are the receptors that respond to red light, and cryptochromes respond to blue light. These have a variety of functions, including regulating seed germination, plant height, leaf number, size and shape, as well as determining when the plant will flower.
So that's why we're cutting out different wavelengths, is because we want to see how the plant responds. And it might be that it responds and it grows faster, or we get a different shape of leaf maybe. But actually, I think what we're also likely to see are things where the plant will produce a different biochemistry, so it'll taste different, it'll have different sensorial properties. And that's really important if you're looking to produce, you know, really sort of taste differentiated crops.
So in a way, is this genetically modified?
No, not at all. So this is working with the genetics that the plant has, but what we're doing is we're activating certain parts of the genome to do things under conditions when maybe they wouldn't normally do it. It's well known that plants use red and blue light for photosynthesis, and that generally they reflect green light. And that's why down here, the plants almost look black. It's because they're using and they're taking all that red and blue light in. And up here, they are reflecting a lot of that green light. But there's a lot of data that's coming to light that shows that plants don't just reflect all of the green light. They do use some of it, and the exposure to green light can actually give yield gains. So these sort of like traditional pink farms, you know, they're photosynthetically efficient, but are they truly efficient for plant development? And that's the sort of questions that we're looking to ask here.
These artificial lighting setups also allow these farmers to remove all seasonality from the growing process, replicating lighting temperatures for different seasons to produce many more harvests all year round.
These aren't getting any light at the moment.
No, so this is nighttime on this shelf. So 12 hours of light, 12 hours of dark, and that allows us to open out the shelves.
The concept of vertical farming has been around for decades, but only in recent years have the advances in LED lighting allowed for the production of certain premium crops to become a commercially viable business model.
We've got some mustard, we've got some broccoli here.
And you say that's broccoli. That doesn't look like the kind of broccoli that I eat.
So a typical broccoli, like the broccoli you'd be used to, you know, there's a big head. They've been grown for months. But this is a microgreen, so you can see the first 2 leaves have come out. So these are the seed leaves, called the cotyledons. And once this has 1 or 2, what we would term true leaves, that would then be a microgreen. So between germination and harvest, we're looking at really no more than two weeks for a typical microgreen. They're really tasty, and they do have, particularly broccoli, packs an incredibly nutritious punch. So this is a basil microgreen.
And why would someone want that over, say, the basil plant that you would buy in a general supermarket?
The flavour is just so much more intense. Try something you like.
That's the strongest basil.
And so that's the beauty of the controlled conditions.
Oh my God, that is so strong.
It's super strong. It makes the most amazing pesto.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Do you often...
I might take some home every so often. So we're able to also sort of, you know, play tunes with the nutrients as well as playing tunes with the light. So we do get a much more nutritious, better tasting crop out of it.
And that tastes very much like pea, but very strong pea. Oh, wow. The taste test is done and I approve.
Due to energy economics, these practices have been restricted to the farming of leafy greens, herbs and microgreens. But soon we expect to see farms transition to the next phase of root vegetables and ground fruits, which require approximately 2.5 times more energy to grow.
How do you think this is all going to fit into the future of farming?
So it's not going to replace traditional crop farming, like what would be called broadacre farming isn't going anywhere, because there's crops like wheat and barley, which are just too big to grow in systems like this. But these systems do really well in producing salad crops, and a lot of the salad is actually imported. So to reduce reliance on imports, to reduce food miles, you can localise production. It also allows you to be produced year-round and not have to worry about the seasons. And so it allows you to become much more sort of, as a nation, self-sufficient.
You want to sell on this technology. How much interest have you had?
I think most of our interest is coming from those parts of the world that are getting hit hardest by things like climate change and where there's a very high propensity to import goods. So for example, the Middle East, a lot of the countries there are 90% plus imports. I think for them, it's really about stability in the supply chain and overall food security. And I think COVID has highlighted the fragility of global food systems. So if we can farm crops closer to customers in a much more sustainable way that's cost effective, why shouldn't we?
We do have a growing population. How do you see us feeding all of those people safely and sustainably?
First of all, I think that one of the key aspects that vertical farming addresses is not really about the volume of food, it's about the quality of food and the distribution of food. So at present, for example, we waste a lot of the food that we produce because it's shipped from across the world, or it's covered in nasties, or we have different requirements in terms of the aesthetics. What vertical farming can do is allow you to effectively bring production much closer to the point of consumption, waste less, and increase quality, and also reduce the use of things like pesticides and other nasties that would be associated with outdoor farming. The important thing is that this doesn't remain as some kind of a premium play just for inner city areas and for middle class people who want to, sprinkle products on their food or go to a Michelin star restaurant. This sector needs to become mature.
Vertical farming has seen significant growth over recent years, from industry frontrunners Aero Farms in New Jersey to Emirates Airlines, now funding the world's largest vertical farm in Dubai, set to harvest 3 tons of produce every day. Alongside these super farms, Jamie hopes his modular, scalable systems and knowledge-sharing approach will bring business opportunities and fresh local food to the most unlikely of regions.
It's one of many things that we should be doing as a society, as a human race, to deal with a lot of the issues around climate change and population growth.
Agricultural land's getting pressured, and if you can work ways to intensify agriculture without adding additional pressure to agricultural land, then this is the perfect way of doing it.
Life moves pretty fast. Ideas move at the speed of sound. Technology moves at the speed of light. If you don't filter out the noise, you might miss the details. We pay attention to the details because they matter, showing you a different perspective. See the difference.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
The world has changed under the pressure of the pandemic. For many of us, life is returning to some kind of normal. As we're adapting to changes in all of our lives, let Global Business Europe be your guide to the new normal. Join us weekdays on CGTN.
On the agenda with me, Stephen Cole, we look up into space. We look down into data. We look at debt. We look at politics. We look at opioids, climate change. We look at all the issues that really matter around the world. But you matter too. We want to tell the stories you want to see and hear about. Make it your agenda.
And from Thursday until the start of December, you must stay at home.
I'm standing in one of the COVID-19 wards at CHU Liège. It's one of the main hospitals in the province.
CHU airlifted 2 patients to Germany on Tuesday.
Spain, Europe's coronavirus epicenter. Not once, but twice.
Well, I'm cautiously optimistic that we will get to a safe and effective vaccine. I don't think we'll see it this year.
The 2 worst affected regions, Campania and Lombardy, have taken that further and imposed a total curfew.
On the 25th of June 2019, a small package the size of a shoebox was aboard a SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket, launched into Earth's orbit from the Kennedy Space Center. 1 month later, that package was deployed and unfurled into a solar sail the size and shape of a boxing ring. Known as the Light Sail 2, this is the second attempt by the Planetary Society to demonstrate the feasibility of controlling small spacecraft by harnessing the power of the sun. Particles of light called photons, which have no mass but do have momentum, collide with the reflective surface of the sail, bouncing off to impart a minuscule amount of push on the spacecraft. Similar to a sailboat, the solar sail pivots to harness light energy. Orbiting the Earth at 720 kilometers, as the light sail moves away from the sun, it displays its full surface area to generate the greatest amount of solar push, increasing its speed. Conversely, as it approaches the sun, it limits the surface area of the sail, preventing deceleration. This dance manages the propulsion of the spacecraft by endlessly increasing or decreasing its orbit, using only the power of the sun. At its simplest, this technology keeps satellites in orbit, resisting the gravitational pull back to Earth, but without the need for rocket fuel. Solar sailing allows for easier interplanetary propulsion too. Plans are already in place to use a solar sail to launch a secondary reconnaissance mission from the Moon to a near-Earth asteroid. Applying the same concept, a more ambitious group, Breakthrough Initiative, led by billionaire Russian physicist Yuri Milner, are investigating using solar cells, blasted with photons from lasers, rather than the sun, to accelerate tiny spacecraft to 20% the speed of light, with the goal of reaching our nearest star, Alpha Centauri.
Here they are in our homes, augmenting our comforts, serving our needs. When we take to the open road, we find them again in our car. Plastic, plastic, plastic.
60 years ago, it was called an amazing invention, but its durability has become an environmental curse. Billions of tons of plastic has been made over the decades, but around 90% of it hasn't been recycled. I'm Emma Keeling in Gothenburg, Sweden, where a group has developed a process that can chemically recycle all kinds of plastic so that future production will not have to use more fossil fuels. Morning, Professor.
Yeah, good morning.
Thank you so much for having us. I'm really fascinated what you're doing here. So is this the plant over here, is it?
Yeah, the plant is over here.
So why is it so hard to recycle plastic?
Yeah, plastic in itself is not really so hard to recycle. The problem is that it's actually too cheap and simple to produce from the residues from refineries and from the gas industry.
As usual, it's always about cost, isn't it? But, I mean, so what you're telling me is that you can recycle every single kind of plastic here?
Yeah, we can recycle all the plastics, but we can also do plastics from other kind of carbon sources like wood chips or from used clothes or whatever.
At the Chalmers University experimental plant, Professor Henrik Thunman and his team see plastic's resilience as an asset. It means it can be broken down to a molecular level and transformed into new plastics. And they do this on an industrial scale. 10 tonnes are dropped off at the back door. Hello.
This is Jelena.
Hello.
She will present you for how to do the experiments here.
We usually run around 390 kilos per hour into the system.
Wow. So all that plastic has just been recycled that quickly?
Yeah, well, on a daily basis, one can say that it's nearly 10 tons per day if one runs continuously 24 hours.
Fabulous. Wonderful. Before we see plastic recycled, we need to understand how it is made. It starts with crude oil, which contain long-chain hydrocarbon molecules. When distilled in a refinery, the oil is separated into fractions, which are a mixture of hydrocarbon chains. One of these fractions, naphtha, is the crucial compound used in plastics. Its long chains are diluted with steam and briefly heated in a hot furnace to crack the chains into smaller molecules. Different plastics are made up of different molecular structures of carbon and other elements. The researchers have tested all kinds of plastic at different temperatures and have successfully broken them down into the desired molecules.
Proof fuel, it is a residue from the car recycling, which is almost everything that we mix together. It's
all the nasty
really,
stuff.
This is really nasty. It's like no one wants this one. And then we have the cable plastics.
Right.
One other part, which is some metal, but mostly polyethylene and some simple. And we also tried then the pure polyethylene.
To produce virgin plastics, they use the same process that creates it, with one important addition: sand. The sand, or bed material as they call it, is heated using waste wood chips delivered to the university, which release less CO2 than fossil fuels.
This is where we actually take this bed material, which is at this state around 800 to 900 degrees. And it's like 20 to 40 tons an hour that comes this way, which we then direct into the steam cracker.
Aha! It's impossible to see the process in action, so to help people understand, PhD student Anna Köhler has built a model. The white powder represents the sand. It's transported up by air and flue gases from the combustion of wood chips, where the sand is heated, and by steam in sections where the plastic is converted. So the sand is heated here, and then over here, is it then mixed with the plastic?
So this part is the combustor, where you do the heating of the sand. And it takes up the bed material as it's heated, and then the sand is separated from the flue gases. And the flue gases go down one way, and the hot sand goes into the next reactor. And this reactor, you feed it with steam, and you feed in the plastic.
And so this is like the steam cracker?
Yeah, this is the steam cracker, this part. So then you crack the plastic into its different molecules.
It's getting hotter and hotter.
Yeah. So the hot sand is actually coming down in that corner on the other side that we just looked at. And then we have the feedstock, the plastic, recycled plastic that is actually falling down into this hot bed material.
Okay.
And then we use this steam that we are taking from here to get this movement of the sand. And then inside of this, the sand leaves its heat to the plastics and then break it down into the molecules. And the gases that is produced then is then transported away in this pipe up here.
The plastic, which is now different gases, will later be split up to make chemicals or new plastic.
So all gas that we are producing when we put in the plastic in the reactor, we are directing here and drying it. So we can send dry gas, which contains carbon monoxide, hydrogen, light hydrocarbons, methane as well. So it's a mix of different gases, which we analyze so we can, depending on the composition, discuss how it can be further on utilized, which kind of chemicals we can recover. So the other part of the gas, which contains aromatic fraction, we are sampling and analyzing in our special lab.
Aromatic fractions are ring-shaped carbon compounds, the simplest of which is benzene. The more complex the compound, the more rings it has.
Here is Jessica is doing analysis of the aromatic fraction that we have sampled in our product gas. So as we can see here on chromatograms, as the result of the analysis, we got the majority of those chemicals that are valuable, such as benzene, toluene, styrene, and naphthalene.
So you make some money out of the system as well as doing the good with the recycling of the plastic.
Exactly.
But most of the aromatic compounds formed are not valuable and can only be used as fuel in the combustor, which is where the sand and the impurities attached also goes.
And on the bed material then you get all these contaminants, so the carbon and the ashes and fillers and other things. So they then follow with the bed material back into the first part where you do the combustion. And then it just goes round and round. And from the combustion side, then you take out the ash components and so on and regenerating the bed material at all the time. So you can operate this continuously.
So you're not constantly putting out all sorts of horrible gases into the atmosphere?
No, we clean it extremely well. So what we do is actually that we have a cleaning system on our system that meets all regulation for a waste incinerator. So we can actually do waste incineration in the middle of the city.
The temperature and time in the process can be adjusted to deal with the combinations of different plastics and biomatter. Depending on the fuel used, they can convert 65 to 90% of the plastic waste back into virgin plastic.
So this is what we are going for with our cracking. So this is the virgin plastics once again.
Wow.
So we started with all these different products that we saw out in the power central with the wood, with the proof fuel, with the waste material, and then we get down to the molecules, and then we get back to the virgin plastic again, which means that we can start all over again with new plastics.
The Chalmers researchers have shown how plastics can be transformed back into their original quality in a cost-effective way. And they're confident it could be integrated into the existing infrastructure of plastic factories.
Someone needs to go first, and this is of course what we are doing. We are looking in and we have discussion with companies, and of course it's some companies that have pushed us in this direction, and therefore we also can work in this scale.
But it will cost them. They're going to have to outlay some money to implement this process.
Yeah, you have to pay, but it's the same for any technology. The good thing here is that the feedstock that we talk about is something that the regular customer pay to get rid of. So they have a more or less free feedstock if they get hand of it.
Plants would require 1 to 2 million metric tonnes of plastic waste per year to match the production levels they reach through fossil fuels. But it could create a market for collection. Plastic could become the wonder material it once was, but the world will need to change its manufacturing and recycling systems or continue to choke and contaminate our land and waterways.
This world of the molecule belongs to us all. It is yours to explore, your new frontier.